We're now live. Presenter's laptop sound check. Presenter's laptop sound check. Clerk's laptop sound check. Clerk's laptop sound check.
We do have quorum, and you are now live.
Thank you. Looking for. Good morning. Welcome to the General Issues Committee budget meeting for February the 4th, 2022. Quorum is present, and I would like to call the meeting to order. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website. As well, a reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. Members are reminded of the 5-minute time limit, which will be adhered to during this meeting. Members can submit another request to speak if they require additional time to ask questions or make comments. Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, we do have the addition of the January 27th minutes. As well, we have added staff presentation 6.2, the 2022 preliminary tax operating budget, corporate financials, and non-program revenues.
Thank you very much. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda as amended? And I'm having trouble seeing here. Here we go.
Councillors Johnson and Partridge, if you can't see.
Yep, that's fine. Yep, that's good. Okay. Councillors Johnson and Partridge. And
can you see now? Are you able to see before
I'm
we
fine
go
now. Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, thank you.
I just couldn't get something out of the way.
Okay.
We will require an electronic vote. We're going to try our electronic voting again. We were having some difficulty this week. And the voting is on.
Councillor Nan, are you able to vote? Okay, I'll just mark you in there. Thank you. It's working very slow. My apologies. That does carry 10-0. Yes.
Thank you. Members of committee, are there any declarations of interest? See none. We're voting on declarations of interest?
Nope, that was a fat little finger that moved.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see a finger.
No, it was mine. I hit the wrong button.
Oh, I see. Oh, no, we're not voting on declarations of interest where there aren't any. I got it.
Correct.
Your little finger moved.
Yes.
Okay. May I please have a mover and seconder to put the minutes of January 7th GIC on the floor? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Thank you. And any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, the electronic screen.
Thank you, Councillor Pauls. That carries 11-0.
Thank you. And we're moving on to number 6, staff presentations. The first presentation is item 6.1 from the City Manager's Office, 2022 Tax Audit Operating Budget. City Manager Jeanette Smith.
Good morning. Just give me a moment to share my screen. Can you hear me all right?
I hear you fine. Thank you. And we see your screen.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Through you, Deputy Mayor. Good morning, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of Council. It's my pleasure to present the proposed 2022 budget for the City Manager's Office. I will also provide an overview of 2021 achievements from last year's budget investment and look ahead to key initiatives for 2022. With me today are the senior leaders in the City Manager's Office. Laura Fontana, the Executive Director of Human Resources, Matthew Grant, Director of Communications, Charles Brown, City Auditor, Cyrus Tirani, our Chief Digital Officer, and last but not least, Morgan Stahl, Director of Government Relations and Community Engagement. Before I start, I would also like to thank Monique Garwood, and Maya Walters from Finance, who worked with the leadership team to prepare the budget and presentation today. The City Manager's Office advances corporate strategy and Council's priorities. The sections located within the office provide leadership, advice, and support on service areas that cross all areas of the corporation: human resources, innovation and continuous improvement, community engagement, and communications. The team also is leading the equity, diversity, and inclusion strategies with the community and within the organization, advancing digital and data literacy, and advancing intergovernmental relations on Council's priorities. The Audit Division plays a key role in promoting and managing risk, transparency, and compliance. As Council heard from the general managers in their departmental presentations last week, the COVID-19 emergency response has had a major impact on the organization and, of course, our community. And it continues to represent a significant issue for city staff and their workloads. As city manager, I am very proud of how our staff at all levels and in every division have stepped up and worked together to respond to the pandemic and support our community. As recently as December, many were redeployed again and had to work over the holidays to support vaccination clinics. The City Manager's Office is no different. We have been responsible for all HR-related impacts and considerations of COVID-19, including extensive policy work, staff testing, and redeployment of staff, and all communications the city has issued, both internally and externally. With evolving public health measures and pandemic waves, a significant amount of information and education has been required from the city. Like 2020, 2021 saw significant efforts to keep the community informed. This included extensive work with our media partners, which included more than 40 briefings and 153 media release updates, in addition to all the direct communications to the community at large. Navigating the world of vaccine shortages, vaccine clinics and schedules, and then vaccine verification to keep staff and community members safe has taken a lot of time, effort, and commitment. In our own vaccination efforts, I am pleased to say that the City of Hamilton reached a 93% vaccination rate of its employees, and we continue to encourage and support those that have not yet taken steps to become vaccinated. These efforts were encouraged by significant policy work by the HR team to provide our people leaders with the tools and guidance they needed. The pandemic has demonstrated to the city and other organizations that remote work and hybrid work is possible. More than 20% of our workforce were able to perform their duties from home thanks to their commitment and support of our Information Technology Division. In recognition of our learning throughout the pandemic, our HR team, with input from directors across the corporation, developed a comprehensive framework that will help us ensure that we both attract and retain staff in the new world of work. The 4 new work models shared with Council in September of last year are reflective of our needs, abilities, and is in keeping with the expectations we are hearing from current employees and from prospective employees in interviews. This was also one of the trends shared by The Economist, who presented to Council at the beginning of the budget meetings. The City Manager's Office continues to focus its efforts and assists with the efforts of other departments to advance term of council priorities and strategic issues for the city. The following slides will provide an overview of that work in 2021. Last year, work in the City Manager's Office and in other departments involved working closely with the Ministry of Transportation and Metrolinx to bring forward a Memorandum of Understanding to Council for the Hamilton LRT. We also added new capacity and expertise to our team last year that has allowed us to better connect with senior orders of government to seek support and partnerships to address the city's priorities and needs. Intergovernmental relation efforts included funding for Year 5 of the city's transit strategy, advocacy efforts for supportive housing, and provincial investment in mental health and addiction supports for homeless individuals with very high needs, funding to support climate change adaptation and mitigation initiatives to the city, and raising awareness of broadband issues in the city. These efforts continue to ensure our federal and provincial partners understand our needs, challenges, and opportunities on these important files. In 2021, we have made progress on Council's equity, diversity, and inclusion priority. Key among these accomplishments was the relaunch of the Hamilton Anti-Racism Resource Center and the successful recruitment of a new board of directors and new executive director. This milestone, along with ongoing work with equity-seeking groups in our community and the Hamilton's anchor institutions, continue to move us towards a more inclusive Hamilton where all feel welcome and safe. Complementing our EDI work with the community has been the significant effort undertaken by our Human Resources Division with the organization as a whole. Following an employment equity survey in which more than 50% of staff participated, they have completed the City of Hamilton's EDI framework approved by Council in September last year, and with the addition of Council-approved resources, we are beginning to implement that framework in 2022. Council has been very clear in its direction to staff that openness, transparency, and information sharing with the public is a priority. To that end, we have increased the amount of open data sets available to the public, and we saw our interactive COVID map data accessed more than 2.3 million times. With the pandemic, we are continuing to ensure that opportunities for public input are available to the public where and when they want through Engage Hamilton. And we make information available across multiple platforms, including web, mainstream media, and social media. In addition, work on the city's new website is well underway, which will make information more accessible and easier for residents and businesses to learn about their municipal government and access its services online. The Office of the City Auditor is housed in the City Manager's office and reports to Council. The office continued to focus on ensuring accountability across the organization in 2021. Audit completed 4 audits, including one that focused on value for money and road contracts, and one on cybersecurity, and oversaw many more investigations. The City Auditor and his staff continue to help the organization learn where it can do better and make recommendations to help us get there. And the Fraud and Waste Hotline has added one more way for citizens and staff to participate in that program. The need to attract and retain talent and provide training to staff did not take a break during the pandemic. In 2021 alone, the city hired 1,048 new employees to the city and 762 internal hires into new roles in the organization. This was a 324% increase over the year before and includes the temporary staff brought in to support vaccination clinics. And while we welcomed new staff, there was tremendous efforts taken to ensure the well-being of existing staff in 2021. Staff continued to access supports to help with addressing their physical and mental health needs, and members of our team made sure employees remained aware of the opportunities and supports available to them through the ever-changing landscape the pandemic brought with it. People leaders made extra efforts to check in with their teams, especially those working remotely. Human Resources has also commenced development of a new disconnecting from work policy as required by the new provincial legislation, Working for Workers Act. As I mentioned in my own performance evaluation to council mid-year last year, the collection and use of reliable data in city decision-making and operations is a key priority of mine. Our data footprint expanded over the past year to increase the amount and type of timely data released to the public. Our data sets were accessed millions of times, including our COVID data analytics dashboard, which gave citizens the ability to see the impact of the pandemic on our city, neighborhood by neighborhood. It is this type of data accessibility that we will continue to strive to collect and provide to the public so that we can make the best informed decisions and the citizens we all serve can understand why we made those decisions. Part of those data collection efforts included the Our People survey of our own employees that provides important feedback from our employees on engagement, workplace culture, workplace ethics and integrity, and health, safety, and wellness. Staff were surveyed last fall, and with a 62% response rate, despite the pandemic, I am pleased to say that our employees are open and engaged in the city they serve, and we will present the results to council on February 16th. In the coming weeks and months, the feedback from employees will make its way into management work plans to ensure that we continue to support employees in a way they have told us they need. Those efforts and support for employees of the future through City Lab on projects such as BIPOC entrepreneurship in Hamilton and creating a future furniture bank for City Housing Hamilton will continue to ensure that Hamilton remains an employer of choice. And now I will move on to the City Manager's Office 2022 proposed operating budget. This slide shows the organizational structure for the City Manager's Office. Our overall complement has increased by 0.5 FTE, which is the net increase from the addition of the new council-approved staff to implement the EDI framework. This slide provides a summary of the City Manager's Office proposed maintenance budget by division. Overall, we are requesting a total increase of $594,100, which represents an overall increase of 4.6% over 2021. The City Lab enhancement is a council-referred item that would make the City Lab program permanent. Nearly 82% of total expenses are employee-related, and on the next slide, I'll speak to the drivers of the percentage change for the proposed budget. Cost drivers for the proposed budget are primarily employee-related, including the council-approved staffing for the EDI framework implementation, as well as cost of living and merit increases for staff. There are also corporate allocations for technology and insurance and rental costs. And you will have seen across all the budget presentations that insurance is one of the drivers for all our budgets. With the proposed budget, the City Manager's Office will deliver a number of initiatives, including launching the new city's website, develop a public engagement policy and administrative framework to ensure all residents' voices inform decision-making, initiation and completion of several audits in the areas of stormwater management and Code Red, as well as contract management and accountability related to use of corporate assets. We're utilizing grant funding from the province, develop a digital services strategy to advance the city's ability to serve residents online. And like the last 2 years, the City Manager's Office will continue to be involved in the pandemic response and recovery. We will need to focus on recovery for our staff, as many are exhausted from a 2-year and counting emergency response. And recovery for some of our programs and services that have been significantly impacted by the pandemic, and recovery of our community, especially those who have been disproportionately impacted. In the departmental budget presentations, you heard about some challenges with recruiting some roles at the city. In 2022, Human Resources will be implementing a number of initiatives to ensure we continue to retain and recruit the talent we need to deliver services to the community. This includes implementation of our new EDI framework and associated training plans, implementation of new work models for the city that reflect a post-COVID reality, implementation of a new non-union benefit plan. HR will also support people leaders in the rollout of our people survey results and action planning. In the next year, my office will also be doing some work related to policy and process alignment across divisions and departments. This work will involve identifying gaps and areas for improvement that will aid in better alignment and greater consistency. This work will be supported by a temporary position funded through existing resources. Council will also see a report recommending the city's provincial election priorities and related strategy. Beyond 2022, there are exciting projects and initiatives on the horizon. This slide presents the multi-year outlook for the City Manager's Office. The annual increases are based on corporate inflation rates, and this includes an average of a 2% increase to employee-related costs, recoveries and cost allocations between 1% to 2%, and increased revenues of 2%. Initiatives in the coming years include a review of the strategic plan and establishment of term of council priorities with the new council, which will drive staff performance objectives and work plans. The further integration of equity and inclusion into city programs and services, commencing the collective bargaining cycle, and a new work plan for the Office of the City Auditor, including the evaluation of the Fraud and Waste Hotline pilot. 2023 to 2025 plans also include making information easier to access by information and subjects of interest delivered to citizens' inboxes through a subscription program, implementing the action plans coming out of the Our People survey, and further enhancements to the city's accountability through formalizing processes and management systems. Thank you. The leadership team and I would be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. If you could take your thing down, I'd be able to see if somebody wants to speak. So the speakers list is activated, but I don't see anyone on it. Anyone have questions? Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. And Janet, thank you so much for all of the information. You know, it's, and I'm not meaning it negatively, but very small as far as number of staff in the city manager's office, but a tremendous amount of work and output that occurs there. I just want to go back to, you mentioned that we had a 329% increase in hiring last year. And you mentioned, you know, the new hires, etc. But you didn't mention how many have left our employ, because there have been quite a number as well. And I think we need to balance that. Please, through you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. City Manager.
Yeah, through you, Deputy Mayor. I am going to ask Laura Fontana if she has that number at her fingertips as the head of HR.
So good morning. Thank you through you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, Laura Fontana, Executive Director of Human Resources. Yeah, it's generally the same. It hasn't increased over the last number of years. But I might invite Jody Kosh as well. She may have some more detailed information. I'm not aware of an overly increase in our turnover rates. In any way, in terms of resignations or retirements, but Jody may have more information.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor. Part of the number and the reason it looks so large is the number of temporary contracts that we provided to folks. So if you think of the number of people we hired to support the fixed clinics at First Ontario, we then terminated those people at the end of their contract and shortly thereafter hired again to support the mini mass clinics that we're running at Lime Ridge and Barton. So those numbers appear quite inflated. It's an accurate reflection of the volume and the number of hires, but there's a number of temporary contracts. And much of the work supporting COVID were temporary contracts, but many times they were within 2021, a termination of a contract and then hiring again to support similar efforts. And to Laura's point, it is very consistent with our regular attrition year over year. There's nothing there that's causing us any significant concern.
Thank you, Jody. Councillor?
Thank you for that, because I know, and I apologize, Madam Deputy Mayor, because Laura's camera went on circle there, so I missed a little bit. But I guess my concerns are out of the fact that we're losing a number of staff in our building department and in our planning department. Planning department, most importantly, because I know I'm having a shift of staff who are available to do our planning applications, and we're losing some senior staff, some seasoned staff. So that was why my query came forward, because I have major concerns that, are we keeping up with the staffing needs in these very important departments right now when we're over $2 billion in building permits this past year. So I don't know if you can elaborate on that, Jeanette or Laura, or Jody. Thank you.
Through the Deputy Mayor, I'll maybe start at a high level and then pass it. Certainly in talking to my colleagues across the province, I mean, we all were expecting that as the baby boomers aged, municipalities were going to see a significant number of retirements over the years. I would say also the pandemic has made lots of people kind of sit back and reflect. The nature of work changing gives them greater flexibility in terms of, where they live and how they work. And also, as some people have wanted to move up and gain greater and greater responsibility, sometimes those openings aren't available in our own municipality. So they've gone to a neighboring municipality to get that experience. And unfortunately, we see some of them come back. But I would say there are some key roles where there are shortages across the province, and it's making it more challenging. And the ones that I've certainly heard about are planning related staff, registered nurses for long-term care is another one that is a critical role where there's shortages. And I'll pass it on to Jody to add on any more specifics.
Jody?
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor, we do recognize there are some key areas and some key critical positions that we continue to be challenged in terms of attracting and retaining folks in those roles. We have been working really closely with the departmental leadership teams and with our HR business partners have just recently been engaging in the workforce planning exercises. So each year we do a review of all of the attrition risks through retirement as well as flight risk and look at critical roles or hard to fill roles and develop talent strategies on how we can better attract folks to those roles. What we heard this year when we went back and revisited that, we actually have fewer of those critical roles identified and a greater success in terms of some of the strategies we've used to attract people to those roles. It is very much still a work in progress, and particularly when you look at things in healthcare, that challenge is province-wide and nationwide. And we are working right now with members of our public health leadership team on how we can better develop a strategy and differentiate ourselves from others that may be competing for the same sources of limited supply.
Jody? Councillor?
No, I'm satisfied with that, and I just wanted to make a point of it today, because I know that these are issues that we will continue to see going forward this year and maybe for another couple of years in light of the fact of, the boom that Hamilton is seeing, which is great, but we're also seeing an exit of excellent staff. And I believe it's more due to the stress of having to keep up with the number of applications, the shortage of staff to backfill, etc. So I want to thank all of staff for their answers. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Good morning, Deputy Mayor Vanderbeek. Thank you. City Manager, thanks for your presentation. I really like your executive team lineup. Very talented. You got some continuity there and some couple of new people you've added as well over the last year or two. And so I congratulate you on bringing important leadership talent to our corporation. City Manager, I'm just going to ask you a really broad, wide open question. And that is in light of what the stress that our community has experienced in these last almost 2-year anniversary in March of the worldwide pandemic that none of us could have ever expected to go through. I mean, there was SARS in 03, was short time, swine in 08, short time, but nobody expected this. And in your multi-years of being in public life and as a public servant, reaching the pinnacle of the position here in Hamilton, I know the community, and I'll speak for many people I've spoken to, are wondering how municipal services are going to come out of this pandemic eventually. And will there be a hybrid of services? Are neighborhoods going to have to worry that there'll be limited amount of availability, affordability? Will that particular rec center arena possibly need to be closed because, well, the pandemic has unfortunately taught us some things that we just can't keep everything going because now we have a hybrid of people working at home, people on the front line, but it's not like it was pre-COVID. If you're getting the overall thrust and gist of what I'm asking City Manager Smith, in your years of experience, and none of us have ever gone through this before, where do you see municipal services? And I know my community is looking for hopefully some positive reinforcement messaging coming out of this. And that's my basic question, Deputy Mayor Vanderbeek. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. There's a lot in there, Councillor Jackson, so I'll do my best to address it. So I think as we look at coming out of the pandemic, you know, we have learned a lot of things. And there are some types of roles that can work hybrid, you know, in the office at times and at home. But I would say the bulk of our employees, and I'm like 80%, are still out in the field all the time. So that new workforce model that HR brought forward with input from the leaders, and it's very similar to the work that other municipalities, was very thoughtfully done in the different job classifications, recognizing there is a lot of our employees that are there at work every day, the rec centers, paramedics, fire, long-term care, and that is the bulk of our workforce. So they're still going to be there because those services are face-to-face with the clients, etc. I would say, though, you know, we are going to see some of our services evolve over time. We, you know, quickly made more services available online. That doesn't mean we don't continue to have our counters at the municipal service centers or at City Hall because people want to have face-to-face or they want to talk to someone on the phone. But for some people that are working with young kids, having more online availability that 10 o'clock at night they can go on and pay some bills or book a service or things like that, those are the things we have to advance. Other services, I think we'd say our shelter services and our long-term care, they will probably look different because what we've learned during the pandemic of how we provide those services, it's not going to be going back to the exact way it was before, those congregate type settings. So I don't think the public should expect a reduction in their service. That would be more around budget decisions versus coming out of the pandemic. I would hope in what we're looking at, they might have more opportunities and flexibilities for some of those services, but the face-to-face are still going to be face-to-face.
Thank you very much for that answer, that response, City Manager Smith. I guess the bottom line for me will be, I know that there's a murmuring amongst the people I represent when I talk to people that there's a level of service that they've come to expect from their municipality that overwhelmingly the majority, strong majority, at least in my ward, support and don't mind paying a level of tax for, in spite of our city's ability to pay versus our, I often say, our richer neighbors to the east and west. So I just have a little worry and nervousness coming out of the pandemic that at the level of taxation currently, if the level of service isn't maintained to some degree, even if it's a hybrid, then there may be some pushback and some backlash from what our community has obviously, in a very stressful, unfortunate way, endured trying to come out of this health crisis. So it sounds like City Manager Smith, you've already got this on the radar. You're intelligent and talented enough to realize that we're in a new age and we may have to do some things differently, but it sounds like you're definitely going to sustain as much as you can a traditional way of municipal services as well. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Vander Beek.
Thank you, Councillor. And I have Councillor Wilson. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very appreciative of Councillor Pearson's line of questioning on not only the new hires that were noted, but trying to get a handle on the exits. And I guess more of a comment than a question. Beyond this period of pandemic, we know that over the next number of decades, we're going to be experiencing significant worker shortfall. Like we haven't seen, and this is going to be over an extended period of time. We're going to have more people over the age of 65 than we are going to have under the age of 14. And that's going to impact the municipality. And just like any operation, we're going to have to ensure that we provide a safe, meaningful experience at work. And I know sometimes that's not popular to say out in the public because it's easy to bash public servants. But my experience in the 3 years is the ones who are doing the work are doing it at an exhausting pace. 7 days a week, maybe 6 days a week, just long hours. And so as a corporation and as a place, giving thought to these folks have an affordable place to live, directing our efforts to ensure that women can participate fully in the workplace because we're going to need every single woman because of that cohort change. And so childcare opportunities, quality childcare opportunities, all of these things as an organization, we're going to have to give thought to if we're going to hold on to and attract talent. And the third thing is thinking about municipalities not just as service deliverers, but as policy makers. And, I think we have maybe one or two tax analysts, and I think we're going to have to think about our complements as well as we move forward. And so my final comment is to the city manager on behalf of this elected person. I recognize the hard work of all the public servants working at the City of Hamilton, and what a gruesome experience, frankly, it's been, but very appreciative of their commitment to the city and to each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I want to just take this opportunity to thank our hardworking city manager for doing such an outstanding job. I kid her. I think we interact, virtually daily, and I kid her that the moment she arrived, everything started to go downhill. None of her doing, quite frankly. Pandemic, you name it, we've had it. And she has managed it and worked our way through it and given us good, solid leadership. on the management side in every way possible, and has done it predominantly with a smile on her face, which given the challenges that we've had to face, a lesser person might have cowered in the corner, and she stood up and bravely tackled them all, and has built, I think, a very dynamic, experienced, talented senior management team while we're at it. As you know, we've had a number of changes there as well, and I'm really delighted with the work that City Manager Smith, Jeanette, or Janet, whatever you prefer, has been doing for us, all the way through from day one. So I have nothing but compliments. And yes, I'm not going to make any predictions about where the future goes. I know full well there are going to be changes. What we need to ensure, and I think we have, is an organization that's adaptable, that is flexible and prepared to pivot. And I think that's been demonstrated quite significantly over the past 2 years, where we've had to, almost pivot on a weekly basis into different dynamics and moving people around and closing facilities and then opening facilities or diverting people to vaccination processes and other pandemic related issues. So nothing but grateful for the enormous amount of work that Jeanette has done. And she will say, as she should, it's all about team, as it always is. Great team, great group of people, lots of folks putting their shoulder to the wheel. But it needs kind of overriding good quality leadership, and Jeanette Smith has delivered that in spades. So, without getting too lovey-dovey, thank you, Jeanette, for wonderful work. You've served our municipality well, and I've no doubt will continue to serve our municipality well into the future as we meet the challenges that are ahead of us. And if you look at some of the cities in Canada that are facing challenges right now, um, and I do want to mention Ottawa, which I just feel terrible for the citizens of Ottawa right now, and I wish we could do something to help them. Uh, but there are more challenges coming our way. This is a more aggressive, divisive world, and that is going to cause us to ensure that we have appropriate resources in place to be able to manage and deal with that. And it's probably not going to come cheaply. And so, this pandemic has affected just about every area of work in one manner or another, and that has expense related to it as well. And I think my mission, and I think our collective mission, continues and ought to be maintaining services to the best degree possible. As Councillor Jackson pointed out, reasonable expectations have been developed, and pre-pandemic we were in a lovely state of growth, positive development, positive service delivery, extending into morphing into more online services as the technology actually evolves and allows us to do more and more of that. So all of that is happening and still is happening, and hopefully will continue to happen as we move out of the pandemic. Date unknown, but certainly today, looking to a somewhat more improved scenario that we all appreciate and hope will continue. So all that to say, thank you, Jeanette Smith, for your great work. I have really enjoyed working with you and hope to continue to do that in the future, but your service to our community has been exemplary, and I just want to thank you for that great effort.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no one else on the speakers list. So Jeanette, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. Very informative, and really appreciate both your presentation and your work. I need a mover and a seconder, please, to receive the presentation. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Thank you. And the vote will be electronic, and it will be on your screen.
Councillor Pauls, are you able to vote? Councillor Powers, I've got you. Thank you.
Thumb up for Councillor Pauls and for Councillor Farr.
Okay, let me just check Okay, I've got everybody. Thank you. That carries 13-0.
Thank you. And we'll move on to presentation item number 6.2, which is the 2022 preliminary tax operating budget for corporate financials and non-program revenues. Mike Zagarek, General Manager of Finance and Corporate Services, will provide the presentation. Mike?
Good morning, through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Good Friday morning to committee members. And as I start to prepare to share my presentation, today represents the end of the departmental budget presentations with the city managers. Jeanette's presentation committee just received. There remains one final presentation, and that presentation relates to revenues and expenditures that aren't necessarily attributed to a particular program and service. And we present that through what I am presenting this morning, the corporate financials and non-program revenues. It is, you may be happy to hear it is a rather short presentation, unfortunately still includes lots of figures and numbers. So I'll try to take my time and go through all of the information in today's presentation. So again, these are revenues or expenditures that, again, are not attributed to a particular program and service, and for that reason, they're presented through the corporate financials and non-program revenues. You'll see in the presentation that there are a number of drivers as it relates to our corporate financials. Corporate initiatives, you can see, are increasing by approximately 130%, which is significant, with a financial impact of approximately $4.3 million. Corporate pensions, benefits, and contingency are increasing by approximately 0.8%. Or approximately $131,000. And I'll break these down through the subsequent slides. As it relates to corporate initiatives includes a series of categories. Area rating, our area rating levy. So this relates to land or properties that were acquired by the city and are area rated according to our area rating policies. You'll see that area rated levy is increasing by approximately 20%, or approximately $420,000. What is driving that is the Ancaster Arts Center is attributing approximately $100,000 of that $416,000 pressure, as well as council's decision to acquire the RL Highslop Elementary School in Stony Creek, and that represents a pressure of approximately $380,000. What offsets those pressures is the retirement of the area rating commitment for the previous Bishop Bryan property, and that represents a savings of approximately $65,000. As well, operating impacts from capital. So these are projects that were approved by council either through the 2021 capital budget process or previous capital budget processes. These are either properties or initiatives that are properties that may be at substantial completion, requiring now the staffing and the financial resources to support those facilities, or initiatives, projects that are ready to be executed in 2022. There are a series of projects, capital projects. They represent approximately $3.37 million in pressures in 2022. In 2021, there was we were required to do a budget adjustment in order to net out building enterprise zone in 2021. And so you'll see a cost recovery adjustment. This was a one-time adjustment in 2021. It was a revenue. And so that, again, was one time and is not reflected in the 2022 budget. And for that reason, you see a significant percentage change with that corresponding dollar amount. Other includes a series of categories in terms of other pressures, and other, you can see the other corporate initiatives represents approximately $39,000 in pressures. This category includes our risk management expenditures, property and liability expenditures, as well as our physician recruitment, our AMO support fund, our auditor fees, some transfers to our tax stabilization reserve, and finally the operating costs as it relates to the Waterfront Pier 8 rink and our contractual agreement with the harbor agency providing that service. And you can see again that represents approximately $39,000 in pressures. The subtotal you can see is approximately $4.3 million. And again, that is corporate initiatives as was previously identified on the earlier slide. Corporate pensions, benefits, and contingency, you can see a slight increase in our corporate or our contingency amount, and that relates to a facilities pressure for City Hall that we continue to review, and that may come back through subsequent GICs. Again, we're just reviewing that additional $40,000 pressure. Employee benefits, sick and vacation pay. This is principally, some councillors may recall, back in 2012, staff reported on our sick bank and vacation liability reserves. These are obligations that the city has as an employer to employees as it relates to vacation entitlements and liability, as well as sick bank. Specific to sick bank, there are certain positions within the city that are entitled to sick pay, and as well as the sick pay can be banked, and the city has a liability as it relates to that banked sick pay. These positions are principally in fire services. What is not reflected here is reflected separately through the police services board budget is the sick bank liability for Hamilton Police Services. So as it relates to sick pay, sick bank, again, it's principally Hamilton Fire Services, then a small number of city employees who were hired pre-1980 and at that time were eligible for sick pay, and that is no longer a policy for city employees. So again, it's a bit of a legacy for those employees. What we identified back in 2012 is the reserves for principally Hamilton Fire was underfunded. At the time, I believe in 2012, it was 18% funded. By December 31st, 2021, we're now at approximately, I believe, 62% funded as it relates to our fire sick bank reserve. And what is before you is a budget to contribute to the principally our fire sick bank reserve, and that represents a pressure of approximately $272,000. Retiree benefits, you can see, are decreasing approximately 1.3% or $180,000. The overall budget you can see is significant. These are obligations that the city has as an employer for health and dental, as well as pension liabilities for legacy pensions. And when I refer to legacy pensions, this is not OMERS. This is pensions, the HSR pension and the Hamilton Wentworth pension plans that they're legacy pensions, and the city continues to have obligations as relates to those pensions, as well as a previous pension plan for elected officials that is no longer in place. The $13.4 million budget for 2022, it's almost evenly distributed between health and dental and the pension obligations. The savings, $180,000, are savings as it relates to our health and dental obligations. So again, the retiree benefits, you can see that for 2022, we're budgeting approximately $13.4 million, and then a subtotal for corporate pensions, benefits, and contingency of approximately $15.8 million, as well, $131,000 increase, or approximately 0.8%. And then there are a number of revenues and some expenditures that, again, are non-program. Committee members will be familiar with payment in lieu of taxes. Federal and provincial properties do not pay property taxes. They make payments in lieu of property taxes. And you can see staff are forecasting an increase of approximately $700,000 as it relates to payment in lieu of taxes. And again, this is forecasted based on historical experience as well as our understanding of any properties that may be added onto the city's inventory of payment in lieu of taxes properties. Penalties and interest, you can see staff are forecasting an increase of approximately $400,000 relative to 2021. Penalties and interest relates to property owners who are unable to make their obligations as it relates to paying their property taxes in time. You may recall, committee members may recall that the City of Hamilton, as did a number of other municipalities in the early days of pandemic, we had a program to waive penalties and interest to assist property owners as it relates to the early stages of this pandemic. You can see that we are forecasting approximately $11.4 million. We will be providing some additional information in 2022 as it relates to our experience around property owners who are in arrears. Some early information we're receiving is that our current situation seems somewhat positive relative to and I'll use 2019 pre-pandemic, and that the number of arrears seem to be declining relative to 2019. So positive trend, given the uncertainty surrounding the pandemic and how the pandemic is impacting property owners. In 2020, 2021, there are a number of federal and provincial programs in place to assist property owners. As it relates to commercial property owners, there continues to be a provincial program that provides some property tax and utility assistance to the commercial property owners, and I believe as well our farmland or agriculture property owners. So again, there are continue to be some specific programs for those property owners, and that may be contributing to some of what we are experiencing as it relates to arrears 2021. Right away, these are essentially easements, city easements, and we generate revenue as it relates to those easements. And you can see we're forecasting relatively the same budget for 2022 relative to 2021, a slight improvement of approximately 0.1%. Seniors tax credit. The city provides a number of programs for seniors. Senior tax credit is one of those programs for property owners, seniors who meet a series of criteria surrounding income, assessment value. Those seniors are eligible for a tax credit. The tax credit amounts to approximately $200 per eligible property owner, and in 2001 we had approximately 3,000 eligible seniors who subscribed to that program. In addition to the seniors tax credit, we have a tax increase deferral program, and we had approximately 30 property owners, 30 seniors who took advantage of that program. And then we have our seniors and low income full deferral property tax program, and we had approximately 22 property owners subscribe to that full deferral. So again, a series of programs to assist seniors who may find themselves in challenging situation as it relates to the property tax obligation, and again, we continue to promote those programs through our seniors and through the city's website, as well as through some mailings to property owners annually through the property tax billings. In addition to the seniors tax credit, you can see supplementary taxes. Staff are forecasting a slight increase in our supplementary taxes. These are taxes we realize in the year, maybe through property improvements, property owners who make improvements, and that corresponds to increased assessed value, and we realize some additional revenue as it relates to those improvements. And that represents approximately $10.1 million we are forecasting for 2022. Tax remissions and write-offs, you can see that we are forecasting, this is an expenditure, we're forecasting approximately 7.9, just short of $8 million. This is related to property owners who are eligible for property tax relief through an appeal. It could be attributed to a natural disaster. It could be attributed to an unfortunate event like a fire where a property is no longer occupiable, and consequently those property owners are eligible for tax relief through an appeal until such time as they've redeveloped that property. So during that interim period, the city forgoes the property tax as it relates to that property until such time as it's redeveloped, and then it is captured again onto our assessment roll. In addition, the city provides a number of incentive programs. Our Erase grant program, this is a program targeted towards brownfields to provide an incentive towards a redevelopment and the addition of that property to our economic base. That staff are forecasting an unchanged budget of approximately $600,000 for our Erase grant program. Our Hamilton Enterprise Grant Program, this is a program to encourage the redevelopment of properties into residential properties, whereby the city phases in any property tax uplift as it relates to those redevelopments, and we are forecasting a budget again of approximately $900,000 in 2022, unchanged from 2021. And finally, the city offers a grant program as it relates to environmental design for properties, referred to our LEED grant program. And you can see that we continue to budget approximately $300,000 for that program. In 2021, we did see in 2020, 2021, as it relates to the LEED program, and we'll assume that COVID has had somewhat of an impact, is in 2021. We saw a decline in the subscription to that, but we're expecting that to improve coming out of COVID. You'll see that overall, the non-program revenues, staff are projecting an improvement of approximately 3.8%, generating an additional $1.15 million in non-program revenues. There are a series of other non-program revenues, including hydro dividend and other interest. And the hydro dividend, you can see that it's unchanged at approximately $5.3 million. Important to note, this is just the component of our Hamilton Utilities Corporation and Electra Utilities dividend that is reflected in the operating budget. We're forecasting for 2022 approximately $14.8 million in dividends as it relates to Electra and Hamilton Utilities Corporation. You can see approximately $5.3 million we build into to reduce the net levy and to reduce the tax burden for property owners. But the balance of that funding is assigned to our capital budget process, our capital budget, or our poverty reduction strategy. As it relates to the capital program, approximately $6 million of the $14.8 million is assigned to the capital budget, either directly to capital projects or to our unallocated capital reserve. And approximately $3 million is assigned to the council's previously approved poverty reduction initiatives program. So again, approximately $5.3 million of the $14.8 million in dividend funds. Investment income, we continue to budget approximately $4 million in our investment income. Important to note that the balance of our investment income is assigned to the reserves to assist with the sustainability of our reserve funds. Slot revenues, we continue to budget approximately $5.2 million. Understandably, COVID has had an impact as it relates to the city's realization of our share of the Flamborough slot revenues. Again, we continue to budget for a normal year. In 2021, we did realize some revenues as it relates to the Flamborough slots as that facility reopened, but ultimately because of the restrictions had to close down again at the end of 2021. So again, we're budgeting for a normal year, and that would represent approximately $5.2 million in slab revenues. Provincial Offences Act revenues, you can see we're assuming a slight decline in the Provincial Offences Act revenues of approximately $64,000, and that is principally COVID related as we transition through the reopening and through the reopening of our courts. We're assuming a slight lag as it relates to the POA revenues. So again, approximately $64,000 less in POA revenues. This chart, I won't go through it. It's just intended to provide a bit of a time series as it relates to the non-program revenues that I've just highlighted for 2022. And again, just for the benefit of committee members in the community, just to provide you a bit of a time series as to what the city has realized as it relates to these revenues. And through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, as I promised, a short presentation, and happy to answer any questions that committee members might have.
Thank you, Mike. If you would take your presentation down, that would be helpful. Thank you. I don't see any speakers on the list. Any questions to Mike on his presentation? I don't see any. May I please have a mover and seconder to, I almost feel like I must be missing something. Okay.
I did double check. No, you're right. You're okay.
Okay, I see Councillor Partridge, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Powers in that order. Councillor Partridge, the floor is yours.
I was just going to move receipt. Great presentation on all counts. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr.
I was going to do the same, so I'm not interested in speaking.
So it's going to be moved by Councillor Partridge and seconded by the Mayor and Councillor Powers. Did you have questions or comments? You're muted, Councillor Powers. I'm not hearing you. Is your microphone down?
And I was just, no question, I was just going to third the motion.
Okay, well, it's first, seconded, and third. So the vote will be on the screen momentarily. Here it is.
Councillor Pauls, are you able to vote? Oh, there you go. Thank you. That carries 13-0.
I'm sure I might just thank Mike for his outstanding work as well. You know, the financial scenarios that we've been dealing with and the monies we've been getting from other levels of government, all the funding that's coming through is being exceptionally well managed by our manager, director, Mike Sigarik and his team. So I just want to say, you know, keep up the great work. It has been challenging times, and the challenges have been met. So much appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mike. I echo those words, and I'm very appreciative for your always clear and concise presentations. Thank you. May I please have a mover and seconder to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Powers. Any discussion on adjourning? The vote will be on the screen, so don't go away till you vote.
And agenda review will start in about 5 minutes after we adjourn this.
And 5 minutes. I'll be there.
Thank you. Thank you. And that carries 12-1. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a